Democrat Debate Night, also known as the Commie Convention. We'll give you the highlights from that. This society is now exclusively built for women. We'll give you some examples. Finally, a dancing video that, you know what? Just stick around. You're going to want to see this dancing video. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Oh, Democrat Debate Night. It is interesting on these debates now to watch them try to position themselves, to watch who goes after who and analyze why they're going after each other. And keep in mind, as we're about to play you a bunch of highlights from the Democrat debate, every single time one of these candidates speaks, Donald Trump, his campaign, they're collecting all that video and they're making commercials. I guarantee as we speak, Donald Trump's campaign is making commercials showing these Democrats to be absolute crazy people, and they continue to paint themselves into a bad corner just like they did last night. Now, last night was supposed to be a historic debate because there was an all-woman moderator panel. Yes, woohoo, I'm glad we overcame that massive hurdle in the United States of America. Joe Biden. Oh, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's old. And I don't mean that in like the nice kind of, please, Grandpa, give me a Werther's Original kind of old. I mean old, and he's not doing very well. Here's Joe's first cut.
I'm part of that Obama coalition. I come out of the black community in terms of my support. If you notice, I have more people supporting me in the black community that have announced for me because they know me. They know who I am. 3 former chairs of the Black Caucus, the only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate, a whole range of people.
No,
my point is
that's not true. The other one is here.
I said the first. I said the first African-American elected. First African-American. So my point is that one of the reasons I was picked to be vice president was because of my relationship, long-standing relationship with the black community. I was part of that coalition.
The only black woman ever elected to the Senate supports me, and Kamala Harris is all, I'm right here. Look, you're not doing well. And right now, I mean, you could say he's the front runner. I would say it's Warren. You could say he's the front runner. You're not doing well when the other candidates on stage, they don't get mad or even fake being mad. They don't come back at you. They just laugh at you. Joe Biden has become a punchline. And never forget this. Joe Biden was never prime time. He was never a national figure at all. He was just a guy. He was just a normal senator who'd been in the United States Senate for 8,000 years. Barack Obama needed Joe Biden. He needed somebody with foreign policy experience because Barack Obama had never had a real job. He needed a white guy. Joe Biden gave him lots of foreign policy experience and a white guy. So Barack Obama allowed Joe Biden to be his vice president for 8 years. Joe Biden brought nothing of value to Barack Obama beyond those 2 things that I just said. So people think, they look at Joe now and they think, well, he was vice president for 8 years. People, charisma is not transferable by a handshake. Just because Barack Obama carried him along for 8 years doesn't mean Joe Biden was anything special. And on top of that, he's aging. I wasn't just trying to be mean, although it was kind of mean when I said he was old. Everybody ages differently. I'll never see Joe Biden's age. I acknowledge that. But he's not doing great. He can't keep his train of thought. He was never that sharp to begin with. He can't get through a sentence without screwing something up. The other candidates on the stage are openly mocking him. Oh, and you thought that was Joe Biden's only uncomfortable moment of the night? Here's him talking about domestic violence.
No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman in anger other than in self-defense, and that's rarely ever occurs. And so we have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. It will be a big, no, I really mean it. It's a gigantic issue, and we have to make it clear from the top, from the president on down, that we will not tolerate it.
Okay, that was a little bit hard to watch, except in self-defense. You probably should just go with the "don't ever hit a woman" period thing, Joe. I would suggest that that's a much better policy. And then I don't think you're going to punch your way through the domestic violence debate. And again, did you hear that? That wasn't just the other candidates, the laughter you heard. The crowd was laughing at Joe Biden. He's now being openly mocked. Well, at least he gives us great material for the show. Now, I have said something repeatedly, and sometimes people will push back on this, but then they stop because they know I'm right. The Democrat Party, today's Democrat Party, is not something we've really seen before on the world stage, at least nothing that I can think of. What I mean by that is it's much more of an insurgent party. It's much more of a anti-American party than anything else. And the reason I say that, the most glaring example of this, is what other example can you think of in history that a political party or faction of any kind wanted the borders open so other nations could invade? Nobody has ever campaigned for that. The Bolsheviks didn't campaign for that. I mean, nobody has campaigned for that, yet that is an open platform now of the Democrat Party. Here's Elizabeth Warren last night promising that she's going to make your border less secure.
Senator Warren, back to you. You've said that the border wall that President Trump has proposed is, quote, a monument to hate and division. Would you ask taxpayers to pay to take down any part of the wall on the nation's southern border?
So, if there are parts of the wall that are not useful in our defense, of course we should do it.
All right. What? What in the world? And by the way, Elizabeth Warren has stated before, as the moderator just said, that the wall, border security, is a symbol of hate and division. Honoring the sovereignty of your nation's borders is not hate and division. That's called sanity. Sadly, sanity has long since left the building for the Democrat Party, as well as any kind of reasonable discussion between the two parties. Now, I'm not going to do this thing that so many people do too often, which is, we've never seen anything like this in history. I mean, Julius Caesar would probably argue differently as he was laying bleeding on the Senate floor. Politics is now and has always been a contact sport. However, in American politics, currently, where we currently stand, we're not getting this band back together, people. The way they speak about the opposing party, the way Democrats currently speak about Donald Trump and Donald Trump's supporters, it's ugly, and they're not leaving themselves any room for middle ground. Here's Kamala Harris talking about Donald Trump being a criminal enterprise.
There is no question that in 2020, the biggest issue before us until we get to that tender moment is justice is on the ballot. And what we saw today is Ambassador Sondland, by his own words, told us that everyone was in the loop. That means it is a criminal enterprise engaged in by the president, from what we heard today, the vice president, the secretary of state, and the chief of staff. And so this not only points to the corrupt nature of this administration and the need for these impeachment proceedings to go forward.
A criminal enterprise. That is why the leftist base, that's why the Democrat base has completely lost their mind, because constantly the media and the candidates themselves use language like that. That's why Trump supporters are being assaulted, spit on, punched all over the United States of America repeatedly because of language like that. Criminal enterprise, Nazis, white supremacists. You spend enough time dehumanizing your opponent, eventually your nutball base is going to think, you know what? I can do whatever I want to these people. After all, they're Nazis. It's a criminal enterprise. Oh, but the night did get a little bit interesting. I found this exchange to be really interesting. Tulsi Gabbard, everybody knows Tulsi Gabbard, the uncomfortably hot representative from Hawaii, who's very much, bring every American home, less foreign policy involvement. Other than that, she's just as radical socialist as everybody else. But the Democrat Party is really mad at her. And it's weird because she polls extremely low, yet several of the candidates on stage, and frankly, the moderators last night, went after her. On a debate, especially a televised debate this late in the game, you don't punch down. You don't punch at the candidate that's non-existent in the polling. You punch up. You go after the leader. Nevertheless, Kamala Harris, the claws were out last night.
I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
That's
who has
ridiculous.
spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes.
Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making.
Oh, sorry, I guess we're back. Anyway, that was a weird exchange. I did kind of enjoy when Kamala dropped the bombs out there, and then Tulsi calls her a liar, and Kamala does that kind of thing she had going on. That was awesome. All right, now, do you know what ism has killed more people than any ism ever? Communism, or socialism, whatever you want to call it. However, Nazism or white supremacy seems to be the only thing people talk about anymore. Now, obviously, white supremacy or Nazism are horrible things. Don't be a Nazi. Don't be a white supremacist. But it's a bizarre fixation people have with it because these same people never seem to want to bring up communism. I wonder why. Here was Andrew Yang last night.
Well, first we have to designate white supremacist terrorism as domestic terrorism so that the Department of Justice can properly measure it.
Wow, for one, that's a really bold campaign stance. I'm against white supremacy. That should really put him at odds with the 3 people in America who are pro-white supremacy. Again, start teaching your children, because you know your public school is not teaching them. Start teaching your children about communism and the evils of it and the 100 million plus body count it has left behind. There's no more dangerous ism than communism. And I think you and I both know exactly why nobody wants to talk about how dangerous that ism is. Finally, we mentioned Joe Biden earlier and how he is not aging gracefully, and that's no shot at him. Father Time is coming for us all. I'll be drooling on myself one day. That's just the way it goes. But it is true, the 2 leading Democrats in the United States of America right now are Joe Biden, because he's currently the lead to be the nominee, and Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. That's the person 3rd in line to be President of the United States of America. Well, she gave a little press conference today, and you can listen to what she says or not listen to what she says, but I want you to listen to how Nancy Pelosi says it, watch her movements, and ask yourself, is this somebody who's prepared to lead the nation if, God forbid, something were to happen to the president and vice president?
Well, if the Republicans are in denial about the facts, if the Republicans do not want to honor their oath of office, then I don't think that this we should be characterized as partisan in any way, because we are patriotic.
Okay. Now, coming right up, one of our favorite human beings in the world. He'll hit on the debate a little bit for us, but there are apparently some local basic revolts going on around the anti-Second Amendment stuff in the United States of America. So the one, the only, the editor of BearingArms.com, Cam Edwards, joins us in just a sec. Hang on. It is time for the one, the only, editor of BearingArms.com, Cam Edwards. Cam, while I was half watching the debate last night, half listening to my wife, and all the way eating my dinner, I did manage to see that you were at some kind of second debate or Second Amendment revolt or something at a courthouse somewhere. What were you doing last night with the pitchforks out, Cam?
Yeah, this was pretty amazing, Jesse. I got to tell you. So in the 2 weeks or so since the Virginia elections, We've seen 10 counties adopt Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. We've got about 20 more that are considering the measure. And so last night in Amelia County, which is a rural county west of Richmond, east of Farmville, which is where I live, the county supervisors were taking public comment, and I suspected that there'd be maybe a couple of dozen people there speaking out, urging the supervisors to, support a Second Amendment resolution. So I drove over. I couldn't even, park anywhere near the courthouse. There were hundreds of people who could not even get inside that building because it was so full, there to show their support for the right to keep and bear arms and to, in essence, demand that their local officials take a stand in support of the Second Amendment, because we know that state lawmakers are coming for our right to keep and bear arms in just a few weeks.
Cam, before we get to unpacking that part of it, what exactly does that mean, a Second Amendment sanctuary? Can you break that down for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does vary. The language will vary from county to county because it's really a local phenomena. But generally speaking, what we're seeing here in Virginia is a statement. This is a resolution. So this is not an ordinance. This is not a new law. But it's a statement by these county supervisors that they don't want to see a dime of county money spent to enforce unconstitutional gun control laws. Some of the resolutions also indicate that the sheriff can choose not to enforce these unconstitutional gun control laws. And it remains to be seen, how much weight this really carries. But it really, I think, it's a shot across the bow, rhetorically speaking, to anti-gun lawmakers that, if in fact they try to pass these unconstitutional gun control measures, there is going to be pushback. There is going to be a lot of noncompliance, not only in terms of, litigation, but just in terms of, unenforceability and unenforcement of some of these laws. And by the way, Jesse, it's not just Virginia. We're seeing this in Texas, too. 13 counties in Texas, including Montgomery County, just north of Houston, they've declared themselves to be Second Amendment sanctuaries as well.
Which I love. I mean, of course, the great state of Texas. Don't worry, Cam. You're going to end up here eventually. I promise you that much right now. Now, I understand that these things might not have much teeth right now. I mean, I can't understand how they could possibly get real enforcement out of something like that. But like you said, it's a valuable shot across the bow to these people. But look, I don't want to go too radical, Cam, because I know you and I disagree on this. But I think this once again proves what a massive fracturing we have in the United States of America, not just, between states, but between the rural citizens out there and the urban elites and urban politicians. The fracture is real. Like you said, you showed up at a courthouse last night expecting 20 people. You couldn't even get close to the daggone building. I think that there is a simmering anger building in the rural community of the United States of America, and I think there has potential to really split us up badly. What do you say?
I don't know about the potential to split us up, but I'll tell you that simmering anger that you talk about absolutely is real. And it's not just in these rural counties, though. That's the thing. Montgomery County, Texas, 500,000 people there. That's where the Woodlands is located, Conroe, Texas. So I'd say that we're seeing this in suburban districts as well. But it is a pushback. It is, one of the guys I talked to last night, I asked, why are you here? And he said, because I'm tired of feeling like I'm not being heard. And so you've got, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of gun owners across the state of Virginia that feel that exact same way. And when it comes down to the enforceability, look, law enforcement has lots of discretion. We just saw a district attorney elected in San Francisco who said, I'm not going to prosecute cases of people, peeing in public, prostitution, other crimes. If a district attorney can say that, if you can have police chiefs say we're not going to arrest people for low-level drug offenses, then you absolutely can have a sheriff say, I'm not going to arrest anybody for having a 20-round magazine or for possessing an AR-15. And I think we're going to see that happen in Virginia in the next year.
Cam, I have a concern, and you can tell me if I'm crazy, but I have a real concern about somebody getting hurt. And here's what I mean by that. Yes, obviously a bunch of sheriffs, they won't choose to enforce it, but some are going to choose to enforce it. And some Democrat lawmakers are really going to put pressure on local law enforcement. And I have always worried about this. I've always dismissed any claims of a second civil war or anything like that. I think talk like that is frankly absurd. I don't think we're going to see blood in the streets. I think all that talk is absurd. But I have always said the one thing that will get somebody hurt is if law enforcement is tasked with pounding on people's doors and taking away their weapons. I am worried about not just citizens getting hurt, law enforcement officers getting hurt. That's not fair to them, in my opinion, to ask them to do it. Am I crazy to have that concern?
No, because I've talked to sheriffs who have that very same concern. And unfortunately, we've seen this happen in Maryland. There was an individual who was the subject of a red flag firearm law who was shot and killed by officers. He didn't know that police were coming to his door. He just, heard pounding on the door and opened the door. He was armed, and then he was killed. So I think this is a valid concern. And one of the things that gun owners, I think, are trying to say with these Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions is to these lawmakers who are so intent on going after the right to keep and bear arms, stop. Just take a second and think about the consequences of what it is that you're proposing here. Now, I don't know how successful we're going to be in getting these lawmakers to actually consider the ramifications of their legislation. But again, you're going to see, I think, dozens of counties in Virginia. By the time the Virginia lawmakers get back in session in early January, I think we'll have 2-3 dozen counties, if not more, in Virginia that have, passed these resolutions.
Well, I have to tell you, Cam, I really wish you guys the best because, as you know, you and I have had this conversation before. I consider Virginia to be already lost because of that blue D.C. sprawl that has turned the place Democrat forever. And I love Virginia. It's birthplace of liberty and all that. There's so much amazing history there, and it frankly makes me sick. I don't care if New Jersey goes blue. I care very much about Virginia.
There's some history in New Jersey, too. But listen, we're not going down without a fight. Out there last night in Amelia County, State Senator Amanda Chase was there. State Delegate John McGuire, former Navy SEAL, was there talking to the crowd. Lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, pro-gun lawmakers, they're going to be in the minority. But Virginia's gun owners, I think, really are just getting started in building this new grassroots network. And look, Jesse, since Donald Trump's been elected, the left has been telling us it's okay to resist. Right. So if anything, gun owners are learning from the left right now, and how they respond, I think, is going to resemble in a lot of ways the quote unquote resistance we've seen to President Donald Trump.
Cam, is there a lane available for a Democrat to be pro-gun, or at least more pro-gun than they are on a national level? And here's what I mean by that. You have all those idiot candidates on stage last night, and they're all radical, and everybody knows that. You and I've had this discussion a million times. I understand the Democrat Party itself would come out and scream at this person. I understand all the other candidates would scream at this person. But what if somebody like Tulsi Gabbard or even Joe Biden stood up and said, you know what, I respect the Second Amendment, and just left it at that? Obviously, their party would destroy them. I think it would bring the Democrat Party back into the more mainstream. Am I crazy?
Well, if Joe Biden said it, nobody would care, because 2 minutes later, he'd say that I'm going to ban every firearm. I mean, he actually kind of did that with pot last night during the debate. Tulsi Gabbard, yeah, people might sit up and take notice. But here's the thing. Nobody is going to say that. You might as well, wish for a candidate with wings, because you're as likely to see that happen as you are a pro-gun Democrat on a debate stage in 2020. It's just not going to happen. This is the most anti-gun crop of candidates ever assembled in a presidential primary. And even Jim Webb, who was, the Democratic version of a pro-gun candidate a few years ago, even he was in favor of a quote-unquote assault weapons ban. Now, the moderate Democrats are the ones who are not overtly calling for confiscation, right? They're the ones who say, well, we're going to ban these guns, but if you own them, we'll let you keep them for now. That's what passes for moderation these days among Democrats, and it's absolutely absurd.
I guess that's true, but we should all thank Jim Webb for giving us one of the all-time great debate moments when he smiled, thinking back on his time when he killed a Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. That's my Marine Semper Fi, Jim Webb. Cam Edwards, editor of BearingArms.com. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure, Jesse. Thanks, man.
We have an upside-down society right now that is built and catering exclusively to women. That's wrong, and it's going to be our downfall. I'll explain in a second. I'm about to say something that is sad that I have to say, but I do. In this society today, this is apparently a radical statement. Men matter, and men are really, really important. Everything isn't about women. Everything isn't supposed to be geared towards women. Women this and women that. And, well, this has to be nicer to women. We need more women. Women this. Men have a responsibility to protect societies, to lead societies, and we are failing men currently in the United States of America. We have allowed this feminist movement to gain such steam that it's now everywhere you look. It's in corporate America. We're going to show you something about that. It's in schools. It's everywhere. You even have it. It's not just a Democrat or Republican issue. You have Republicans standing up to the microphone all the time. We need more women. I'm proud there's women here. Now, look, I love women. You love women. It's all good. This is not anti-woman. But you cannot gear a society towards only one of the genders and then turn around and say what I hear so often now, where'd all the good men go? You shoved them in a corner. And you thought you could take just the nice things from them and get rid of all the stuff you consider to be ugly. I tell people this all the time, and this is a bit of an extreme example, but it's true. You know, one of the worst things we've ever done was Captain America. As much as I love the Avengers movies and the superhero movies, you know why? Because it gives the American people a false impression of what a real man does in combat. Well, they all say, yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and they all have perfect teeth, and they've never cussed before, and they certainly don't speak ill or in an inappropriate way about attractive women. We think, and we've geared our entire society around the fact that we can strip away so many of the things that make a man and take just the things that make us feel nice. That's not true. And let me tell you something else before we get to all these other things. If you're raising sons, let them get dirty. Let them roughhouse and wrestle and punch and kick and play. It's good for them. And in fact, if you let your kid sit inside all day long and play with his little iPad, you're cheating him out of becoming a man. Strip it away from him, kick him out the back door and say, I don't want to see you again for a couple hours. Go get dirty and have a good time. Go get into trouble. It's part of being a man. When I say there's a concentrated effort, I mean that. It's not just in schools. It's not just our politicians. Corporate America is in on it too. Ooh, don't be too much of a man. Here's this Gillette ad. This is a doozy.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual
Toxic
harassment.
masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
Good grief. And let's be real clear about something. Bullying. You heard that was, of course, the first word out there, bullying. It's not the real men who are bullying people. It's mixed up kids, oftentimes kids without a father or a weak father. I have two sons. They know that I will destroy them if I ever find them bullying somebody, but I've also told them something else, and this is going to make you really uncomfortable. I've told them to hit bullies. It's true. That's what real men do, and that's how you raise real men. No, real men don't harass women. They don't bully other men. But you had better teach your kid how to be strong. And I'll tell you something else you're not going to like, and I know you're not going to like this. When your kid is getting bullied at school, you're going to be tempted, because this is what society tells you to do, you're going to be very tempted to tell your son, you need to go tell the teacher right away. No, you need to hit him in the nose. I'm sorry. I realize that makes you uncomfortable. Look, it doesn't make me super comfortable. It's ugly. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants their kid to go through that. But you want your kid to be a mixed up, ostracized individual, make sure he goes running to tattle to the teacher every single time he gets bullied. We had better men in this society, and frankly, more respectful men, and it was a less violent society back during the days where you would just go outside behind the gym and settle things after school. Meet up on the grass, throw hands a little bit, get up, hug it out. 99% of the time, that guy ends up becoming one of your best friends. But no, we tell boys today, don't do anything and don't do anything. Make sure you tell your mommy, make sure you tell your teacher, and finally you have some mixed up 17, 18-year-old kid grabs a gun someday. It does matter. Psychologist Jordan Peterson had this to say about what our schools are doing to men as well.
It's linked to the idea that there's something wrong with masculinity, and so that the expression of masculinity should be limited in all sorts of arbitrary ways. The fact that kids can't really play at schools anymore is a manifestation of that. The fact that male behavior is often diagnosed as attention deficit disordered, for example, is a manifestation of that. The elimination of competition as a valid form of human interaction, and the failure to recognize that competitive sports, for example, are deeply cooperative in their fundamental nature, as long as everyone is playing by the rules, obviously. So there's that. That's a large part of it.
I really want to hit on what he just said about competition as well. It's a really funny story. I had this buddy. He lived in one of these, well-to-do neighborhoods, and of course they had one of these touchy-feely schools where they had no competition, no winners and losers. Everybody gets a trophy. Well, they gave my friend the charge of the kids one day, and he was out there at recess time, and of course there was no competition allowed, no winners, no losers, until my buddy got a hold of them and all the other teachers left, and they decided to have races. And the boys had the time of their lives. Boys crave competition, and it's good for boys to compete. Have your child compete, and guess what? It's okay if they lose. They'll try to get better the next time. And dealing with loss and heartbreak and learning how to deal with loss and heartbreak is a critical part of growing up to be a normal adult. Do you want to know why we have so many of these touchy-feely snowflakes today that yell and scream and they don't get their way and they seem like total nutballs? Because they never had parents that taught them life's unfair sometimes. Buck up, Buttercup. Sometimes you don't get your way. In fact, most of the time, you don't get your way. Author John Gray had this to say.
The last thing you want is a feminized male. What you want is a man who's learned to be a better man, alpha male, who can also take care of his children, be with his wife, be with his family, healthy testosterone levels.
Fathers, talking to you right now, this is on you. Take control of it. Raise a good, strong man. And notice I said strong man. I didn't just say good man. He's got to do more than just open up doors. He's got to stand up for the people that can't stand up for themselves. He's got to learn how to stand up for himself. Talking about this next, Blaze TV's Sara Gonzalez. Hang on. Well, we're now going to get a female take on all that stuff I just told you about our society right now, and we're going to get one of my favorite people in the world in here, Sara Gonzalez, host of The News and Why It Matters on The Blaze. Sara, I say society today is 100% built towards women. I say it's not great for women, it's not great for men. And what I mean by that is we're telling boys that it's bad to be boys. It's bad to go out and get dirty. We're telling them they should sit still in class every day and put a hand on each knee and be quiet and reserved. We're telling them any kind of masculinity at all is somehow toxic. And I don't think it helps women. I don't think it helps men. I think it has hurt our society as a whole that we have treated women as some victim class and men feel beaten down. And frankly, there's this simmering anger out there. Am I crazy?
You are not crazy at all. I completely agree 100%. I do think that, the traditional male roles and female roles that are looked down upon by the left and the greater society right now, I think they were traditions for a reason. It's because we are all born and we have innate, senses within us. And I mean, you see it from such a young age. You see little boys. I had my little boy at a Gymboree class, and it was an art class. And you know what happened? All of the boys were running around the table, around and around and around. All of the girls were sitting there coloring. It's innate within all of us that we have these traditional gender roles. You can't change it. And I think it does get very dangerous when we're talking about trying to, shame men shame the masculinity out of men. I think that that's really, really incredibly dangerous to do, because you do see this simmering, simmering inside these men who are being told, hey, all of these feelings that you have within you, you're not supposed to have those. You need to get rid of those. I think it's just disastrous for society.
I think it is too, and frankly, I think it's part of the reason we have so many of these psychopaths, these men out there. I mean, so many of these cases, they're told, you're evil, you're stupid, don't ever fight back. Make sure you run and tell your mommy. And oh, by the way, here's a pill bottle. Make sure you jam a bunch of medication down your throat. And then we're shocked when that guy's 18, 19 years old, mixed up, has never had a girlfriend, and he snaps one day. I think we're helping create these monsters by telling people that men suck.
I completely agree, and I largely place the blame on third wave feminism, on modern day feminism, who is the one who's telling all of these men this all the time, and who's ruining it for the rest of the women who maybe like our car door opened every now and then, who we like this chivalrous acts that all of these men are being taught that are good, and now you have toxic feminism coming in and telling men, no, what are you doing? I can do this myself. You don't need to help me. No, it's innate within men to want to protect their women, to want to provide for their women, to want to help, to be leaders, to be brave. It's within them, and we should be embracing it rather than trying to shame them out of it.
Sarah, you and I actually disagree on this one, and I want you to hear me out. I actually do not blame feminism. Now, as much as I enjoy making fun of feminists because it's so easy to get a rise out of them and they're just absurd, I blame men for this. I don't think the feminist movement ever rises to where it is now without men bowing down and meekly saying, okay, yes, thank you, ma'am, may I have another? And I see that all over the place in society, of men are afraid to speak out and they're afraid to speak up. And when you ask them about it, they're like, well, then everybody will yell at me. Well, buck up, Buttercup. I find myself actually having more sympathy for women than I think maybe you do, and that they're feeling a vacuum. Even the feminists are feeling a vacuum. If there's a leadership vacuum, somebody has to fill it.
I mean, that is a great point. I would also like to just see kind of the how these kind of converge when you look at modern day feminism. I think a lot of these feminists are actually parents of the boys that are now millennials. So I do think there's some interesting psychology going on there, that they're being raised by these feminists who are probably ingraining it in them. And how they manage it, I guess, ultimately is their responsibility. But it is an interesting, experiment in psychology.
Oof. Imagine trying to get a decent meal in that house with the feminists doing all the cooking. Sarah, you have a son. How are you going to raise him and teach him about these kinds of things? Because I have to be honest with you, I'm not sure how to talk to my sons about it. Obviously, I'm going to tell them, I want you to be strong. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. But you are one, as a teenager, one bad Facebook post or text or something like that, or frankly, somebody lying away from having your life destroyed now. What lessons do we teach our sons to make sure they're strong, but also protect them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great point. I don't know how any teenager will grow up in today's society and not have something, thrown in their face later on. So it'll be interesting to see how society kind of changes, because I feel like the pendulum is going to have to swing back at some point. Otherwise, no one will ever be able to enter society with any sort of clean slate. But I mean, I think that the important thing, at least what I'm trying to teach my son, is, being leaders, being brave, showing courage, treating everyone with kindness, but more importantly, women deserve to be treated with kindness, respect, open the door for them, respect your elders. I think that these are all, we can all agree, are good things that we should be teaching our boys, and maybe teach them that, hey, you might hear that men are toxic, or that men are violent, or all of these negatives, and just know that that's not the case. I think that we do have to prepare them for the types of talking points that are going to be thrown their way, and just assure them that is not what you are. You need to be proud of who you are, and always remember to be kind.
That's why I think I'm going to start playing all the Rambo movies for my boys to teach them how to be brave. Now, going back to the Democrat debate last night, switching gears just a little bit here. I don't see any of those candidates obviously beating Donald Trump. You and I have talked about this before. My question to you is, assuming that Donald Trump walks away with this election in 2020, Democrats at some point in time are going to wake up. It's easy to make fun of them and think, they're so crazy, they're going to be crazy forever. But that's not, history shows that's not the case. People wake up, people wisen up, people make adjustments. What is the Democrat adjustment they can make to start winning elections nationally? Not that we want to give them any advice.
I mean, look, I think the number one thing they have to do is really simple. It's just to stop being so radical on every single issue. It's to actually, say, okay, maybe we shouldn't be advocating for killing babies in the womb up until the moment of birth. Maybe we shouldn't be advocating for a health insurance healthcare policy that is just an extra step in the healthcare policy that we passed that has failed the American people. You look at all of the policies that they're proposing, and they are so far from the middle. It's insane to me. I mean, you look at all of the Medicare for All plans that all of these candidates have out. It's what Bernie Sanders proposed 3 years ago, and they all laughed in his face. And now every single one of them are proposing it. So it's just they've shifted so far radical in such a short amount of time. I think they have to realize they have got to dial it back down if they want to, appeal to all of these moderates, all of these independents who really don't want that kind of insanity.
Sara Gonzales, host of The News and Why It Matters on The Blaze. Highly recommend you tune into it. Sara, thanks for giving us some time today. Adios.
Thanks.
Well, it's a dancing video you're going to have to see to believe. Hang on. Well, apparently there's some dating type show on the BBC where couples learn how to dance with each other without meeting each other, and then they have like this dance routine. And you know what? Just watch the video for a moment. Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Oh, shoot, my bad. I didn't realize that. All right, start over. All right. You ready? Yeah, this was a different one than I thought. Never mind, it's fine. 3, 2, 1. Well, apparently there's a dancing program out there that's causing a bit of a dust-up on the BBC. Apparently they rolled out a same-sex couple on it, and people are starting to freak out. Look, for the most part, the people I've run into in the world out there today, and you guys go out and play it, for the most part, the people I've run into really don't care what someone else is doing, and I consider myself to be the president of the Mind Your Own Business Party. As long as you're not abusing women or kids or inciting violence, I really don't care what you do. But the truth of the matter is this. People feel like this kind of thing is getting crammed down their throat on purpose, and they're getting a little bit tired of it. You can feel about that any way you want, but when you're talking about, 2%, 3% of the population, but every single TV show, every single Hollywood movie, you can understand how there's going to be some hostility there. I feel like we are facing what's going to be a pushback against this kind of thing, not out of an evil way, not out of a, bigoted way or hateful way, out of a simple family way. I have to be honest. I'm a parent. I have 2 boys, 11 and 9. On Sundays, we'll get home from church, turn on some football. I don't leave the room with commercials playing. I'll pause it. I'll turn off the television because you can't escape this stuff anymore. And you know what? You don't have to feel bad about guarding your children from these things. Yes, at some point in time, you're going to have a difficult conversation with your children about what is right, what is wrong, what's expected of them. You should do that as a parent. But you also are plenty within your rights to be upset about constantly having this stuff crammed in your freaking face. All right. We'll be back one more time tomorrow. Hang on.